I often like to tell people, if you want to help me, if you want to serve me, like, love on my family, do something for my husband, my children who are, if somebody was to send them a card or tell them, hey, I'm praying for you. I know this is hard, because the ripple effect of cancer just affects so many people. And so I tell people all the time, if you want to love me, well, love my children, love my family, my husband, and do something for them, because it's hard watching me go through this, whatever I go through every week. And people love on me well, but I'm hoping that people love on my family in addition.
Cancer is just something that we all have to recognize, acknowledge, cope with, live with, struggle with, rage upon, crush, and even thrive with. This show is more than knowing and fighting or beating cancer. It's more than just relaying science, hope, and technology. Together, our purpose is to demystify cancer, take away as much fear out of the diagnosis, treatment, and process as we can, defeat its grip on our lives. This is The Cancering Show. Our guest today is one in a million. That is, she's a cancer survivor with a very rare type of cancer, ocular melanoma. Statistics say that only 6 in 1 million people are diagnosed with this cancer, but we're going to challenge that today, and you'll hear more about that in a minute. But first, I want to introduce you to Ashley McCrary. She is an ocular melanoma survivor. Ashley was initially diagnosed in 2012 and ultimately diagnosed with metastatic cancer to her liver in 2020. Ashley is joining us by Zoom from Auburn, Alabama. Ashley, welcome to the Cancering Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
So let's start by talking about your diagnosis, that moment when somebody told you there was something unusual going on with your eye. That was a long time ago.
It was actually back in 2012. And I was down actually in your neck of the woods. I was at Orange Beach with some of our lifelong friends who are also from Mobile. And that evening at dinner, my good friend Jill said, "What is that black spot on your eye?" And I remember getting up and going and looking in the mirror, and I came out and I showed it to my husband, and I was like, "Have you ever noticed this?" Because it was significant. It wasn't small. And neither one of us had ever noticed it before. And that was, I want to say that was Memorial Day weekend of 2012. And embarrassingly, I did not do anything about it. When I got back to Memphis, I looked up some things on the internet, and I don't have an anxious personality. So I went a month before I did anything about it, which I'm always really embarrassed to tell people that was the case. But at the time, it's kind of a cool story, because a lot of my story has to deal with my faith and how God has really just sustained me during this time. And anyway, my daughter's birthday is June 23rd, and normally we would have been celebrating her, at a dinner or something. But my husband, actually, you'll find this interesting, he ran an oncology practice in Memphis where we lived. And one of the doctors was having a dinner at his house and invited us to come, which we would have never gone, except Caroline's best friend also had a birthday on the same day and had a spend the night party. And so she was not with us. So we ended up going to this dinner at this oncologist house. And one of the wives there noticed the black spot on my eye and showed it to her husband, who said, "I'm not trying to scare you, Ashley, but you need to go have that looked at like tomorrow." And as you know, to try to get in and see a doctor, you can't do it all of a sudden like that. So I first went to an optometrist that led me to an ophthalmologist. When I went to see the ophthalmologist, it was very interesting, because the sweet gentleman came and sat down right in front of me and looked at my eye and looked at both eyes, and then said, "Let me go get my partner." And then he got him. And the next thing I know, there were 8 residents.
Oh, wow.
Coming in, sitting down one at a time, looking at my eye. And I remember asking, I feel like an interesting case. What's going on? And he said, "Well, you have what we think is something in your eye that potentially none of us will ever see again. It's so rare." And that's when I kind of knew that there was that I wasn't in Kansas anymore, is the way I say it. And they sent me to an ocular oncologist. And if you know anything about the world of ocular oncology, again, it's just a very rare, thing to specialize in. But I lived in Memphis, and one of the doctors that treats all the children at St. Jude was able to see me. And he, of course, did all the tests and came back and said that it wasn't what I was originally told. I was originally told it was something not to worry about. He said, "This is actually a very rare, very aggressive type of cancer," and told me the type of what we would have to do at that time, what we thought we were going to have to do to treat it. I got a second opinion and then found out I had to have my right eye removed. So the course of treatment I had was eye removal back in 2012.
Wow.
which now sounds like a long time ago.
Yes.
It is a long time ago.
And you knew two other women who had been treated for this at that time, right?
I did. And that's what's crazy about it is I actually said that to my oncologist, Dr. Matt Smith, or Dr. Matt Wilson, rather. And he was so sweet. He was like, there's no way that you know two people. This is too rare. They had something else. I said, no, we all lived in Birmingham, and Julie Green and Allison Allred were my two friends. Julie and I were sorority sisters at Auburn, and Allison was in my same friend group, and we lived kind of perpendicular to each other. All of us lived in dorms at Auburn. And so I told them, I said, I know two other people, and they both also had their eye removed, which is unusual because there's two types of treatment you can have, either plaque radiation or your eye enucleated or removed. And both of them had their eye removed. So, I had walked that journey kind of with them. Allison and I were a lot closer friends, believe it or not, than Julie, who was a sorority sister. Julie's a year younger than me, but yes, I did know both of them and had walked that journey with them prior to my diagnosis, which was helpful because typically when you're diagnosed with this, it's so rare. 6 out of 1 million people are diagnosed with ocular melanoma a year. Only 30 to 33 people in the entire state of Alabama. So oftentimes when you're diagnosed, you don't know anyone, and you would never know anyone who had the same diagnosis. So it was very unusual.
Right. And tell us about their journey versus yours. How that helps you to reflect on yours.
That it's a little tricky, to be honest. So they were diagnosed before me, and at the time of my diagnosis, they were able to take my eye, literally have it tested, and I found out that I had the very aggressive type. Like I have all the bad genetic markers. But it was helpful for me to know that information, which Allison and Julie didn't have that opportunity. They were a little before me in their diagnosis story. And so unfortunately for me, because I have the worst genetic markers, we knew that the chance of it coming back or metastasizing actually within the first 5 years is like an 80% chance it would come back. And so because of that, I knew that I would have to have the right kind of surveillance to kind of be proactive. Julie has always done really, really well. She's never had it come back, even though she's actually had another type of cancer. She teaches school in Vestavia and is doing very well. Allison, on the other hand, at the time of my diagnosis, was dealing with metastatic disease and was being treated in Philadelphia. The interesting thing about that was she told the doctors there about me. They began following all three of our stories, which gave me an opportunity to know these doctors prior to my metastatic diagnosis, which was in 2020. Okay. Sadly, Allison passed away. She passed away in 2019. And so that's been a little difficult, obviously, to deal with. But she was a trailblazer, strong in her faith, if anything, very encouraging. But this was prior to my diagnosis with metastatic disease. But they both were and has still, Julie's very encouraging, and we keep up with each other, and she's doing really well.
Great. And CBS aired a picture, the eye cancer mystery, about the three of you, and the topic has gotten a lot more attention. Has anything come from that? Have they figured out why there's a cluster of ocular melanoma?
Yeah, I can definitely give you some more information on that. So we did the CBS show, which then led to doing an episode on the Today Show, on NBC Nightly News. There were so many TV shows that were done in 2019, whether it was local or in Georgia and places like that. And then we were also in People magazine. We were on the Dr. Oz show.
Oh, wow.
October of that year. And so really got a lot of national attention because it was so unusual. And so in light of that, it not only garnered national attention, but it garnered the attention of people who do research in this area. And the people at Thomas Jefferson University, Dr. Takami Sato, Marlena Orloff, and a team of researchers contacted us and another young lady named Lori Lee, who lived in Huntsville at the time, and asked if they could come to Auburn to do some research. In light of that got so many other people involved. The state epidemiologist, Justin George, got involved. And we were able, what happened was we had a gentleman reach out, or his family rather. His name was Mark McWilliams. He was an architect in Birmingham, was at Auburn at the same time, and he had just passed away from metastatic disease to his liver. And his family called me and said, we think there might be some other people in Auburn who potentially could have had this cancer. So we posted a picture of my eye on Facebook. It was shared over 2,500 times. And during the course of a year, 49 people came forward saying that they had ocular melanoma and had also attended Auburn.
Wow.
So the state epidemiologist, Justin George, he had the difficult job of verifying all of those cases. And then the people from Philadelphia came to do some research. They suggested we do a geospatial analysis. And I will tell you that Auburn University was amazing. They assigned a liaison between the university and the Auburn Ocular Melanoma group of 49 people. His name is Fred Cam. He's the medical doctor, director on campus. And he really advocated on our behalf to get the university to pay for the geospatial analysis, which was actually completed during the pandemic in 2020. But for a variety of reasons, I mean, this is fresh off the press. We literally just got the results back a month ago.
Wow.
And they're meeting with all of us. It is actually not considered a cluster. By definition, as you know, being an oncologist, it's very difficult to meet the definition of a cluster. And because our numbers are so small in Auburn, it's typically transient that people are in and out, and for a variety of other reasons. We actually call ourselves a unique grouping of people.
Oh, my Lord.
And not a cluster, because it doesn't meet the definition. But what we found during the geospatial analysis, I can tell you I'm actually under a little bit of a gag order with it until they get the information to the people who participated in the study.
Sure.
But where there's not really a smoking gun that says this is what caused it, because it's so hard to prove that with any cancer.
Of course.
We've learned a lot, and what I'm hoping is that the university is going to take the information that they have and hopefully take research in different directions that could benefit not just the people who went to Auburn, but potentially the people in the state of Alabama. Because one thing that's interesting is when I was first diagnosed, Alabama had the second highest incidence of ocular melanoma than any other state. Oregon was in front of us. And what do we have in common with Oregon? Who knows?
Right.
But since then, we're like number 7 or 8. I can't remember where we are this year, but it's unusual. And so what I'm hoping is the university will take the information that they've learned and potentially, be able to leverage relationships that we have with the people who do research on a national and global level, and be able to maybe come up with what are some environmental causes and potentially make a difference, not just for those who went to Auburn, but potentially, all over the world.
Sure. So often we think of melanoma as a preventable disease when it occurs on the skin, and yet the same, preventions, of course, don't apply to ocular melanoma.
And what we've found is that it is not caused by the sun. And we do know that if you are light-skinned, light-eyed, you're more susceptible. It's not caused by tanning beds. We do know that. If you're a welder, you might be at a higher risk. They say that welding is truly the only thing that they have proven that can show a difference. And we know some things, unfortunately, about ocular melanoma, different from cutaneous or skin melanoma. Ocular melanoma, it goes through your body, through the bloodstream, and not through the lymphatic system. And unfortunately, the strides that we've made in the area of skin melanoma doesn't apply to ocular melanoma, which is also called uveal melanoma. There's no cure for once it becomes metastatic, there's no cure for it. And right now, it's just a lot of trial and error in terms of treatment.
Well, I know you have been part of an ongoing clinical trial. Tell us about your experience with that and how it's helped you.
So I'm so fortunate, for one, with the day I got the news, which was in October of 2020, that I had metastatic disease in my liver. I learned I had over 100 tumors in there. 10 to 12 of them were what I call measurable. My liver looked like a buckshot, just a bunch of tiny tumors everywhere. And I literally had, because we had done all these national media shows, I had been to New York and with some of these researchers and doctors in Philadelphia. And one of them I had become good friends with, and she was in my phone, and I was able to call her literally the day that I was diagnosed. And she was able to get me in within the next week. So fortunate for me, I was able to be seen very quickly. I had 8 months of what they call immunoembolization, only to find out that wasn't working. But during that time period, they tested me for a certain antigen, which is present on my tumors. It's called PRAME, PRAME. And they were starting a clinical trial. and I was number 16 on that trial. And that was literally 3 years ago. So I've gone to Philadelphia. This will be my 160th week.
Wow.
I fly there every Sunday through Tuesday, and I have treatment every Monday. And again, I've done this for 160 weeks. So about a year and a half ago, I began to have some progression. And so they added a second drug, which is called Kimtrack. It's just brand new, just FDA approved for ocular melanoma once it's metastatic. So I have both those agents. I'm on the PRAME trial, and I have what they call Kimtrack. Both of them are infusions, and they're both immunotherapy. And I've benefited from it significantly. I went from over 100 tumors down to 5, and but still have had some progression. I have a place in my lung and my breast. And so we are literally today, I was meeting with doctors about what to do next. So it could be that one of the great things about being on a trial is that I've benefited from it greatly, but there were 17 total people, and now only 2 of us are living. So everybody else who was on the trial has passed away, which is very sobering.
Yeah.
But I'm also feel like a unicorn that it's working for me. So I've been very, very fortunate.
Well, and your story is something that we talk about on the podcast a lot, that we don't know as much about these immunotherapies in terms of what we classically call progression, any growth of tumor. And I love that your team thought outside the box about that, that like maybe we can keep going and see how it goes. Maybe we could do an alternate treatment to some of these areas that aren't responding. Maybe we can add another drug. And you've benefited from that as well by not giving up on the treatments.
Yes. I've been very fortunate. The sponsor of my drug is Immunocore. And one of the things that they have done is very much so looked at the clinical benefit that I've had and allowed me to have radiation when needed, but still benefit from the drug that we know I'm benefiting from. So I've been very fortunate in that regard.
Well, I think your kind of grit and sustained fortitude to keep going and keep traveling is a testament. Tell us kind of how you do it all.
Well, you're sweet to say that. I've been so fortunate in so many areas. When I was first diagnosed, I have 4 children. Their range in age was from second grade, 7 years old, to 17. So my oldest was a junior in high school. And I just remember thinking, I want to be able to raise my children. I want to be able to have that influence in their life. And very early on, I got a card in the mail from I can't even remember who it was from. And there was a verse in it, Hosea 2:14, that said, I will take her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And during my whole journey, I felt like when people ask me, how do you stay so positive, having to travel that much? And really, you get to the point where you live scan to scan. And I don't have an anxious personality, which I'm so grateful for. But really, I believe it's just been my faith, my family, my friends that have really kind of helped keep me positive going. As a matter of fact, I have a really cool story about why, it doesn't cost me anything to go. And that's very unusual.
Yes.
And so when I worked, I was in sales. I used to call on doctors, and I called on this doctor one day, and he had given me some referrals for things I needed. And I got into this elevator that, to be honest with you, the time before when I got on the elevator, there was a mouse on the elevator.
Oh,
and
gosh.
So I never took this elevator because I was so scared that I would be on there again with this mouse. And this particular day, he called me out of the blue. He was never open on Friday afternoons, asked if I would come get these referrals for him. And I decided to get on the elevator to read what he had given me. And these 2 people on there were Aflac reps, and they literally had an elevator speech that they gave me. And that was in October of 2019. When the pandemic hit, they ended up calling me over and over again to try to, just let me know about their products. And finally, in July of 2020, I was like, tell me about everything so you don't have to call back anymore. And so she goes over everything with me. And I said, what about the cancer plan? I had cancer 8 years ago. I would be interested in that, but I probably don't qualify. And she said, no, you do, if it's been longer than 5 years. And so without talking to my husband, I signed up, I paid my first premium, and believe it or not, you had to go 30 days without a cancer diagnosis for it to be activated.
Okay.
And I was diagnosed 2 months later. And so I fly every week. The sponsor of the drug, of course, pays for a lot of my expenses, but I get to take somebody with me. And Aflac covers that. They fill in the gap, like they say, for some other, things that they cover meals and other things that
Mm-hmm.
that my sponsor doesn't cover, but I get to have a person go with me, whether it's been a child or my husband or friends, even friends that I haven't seen in 20 years. I've had be able to go with me, and I call it a girls trip with a side of chemo. And more often than not, and we try to do something that we can enjoy that makes it not so heavy of a time. And I guess that's part of the silver lining as well, knowing that being on a clinical trial, that hopefully they'll learn something that'll benefit not just me, but others down the road. And then getting to spend just really quality time and being intentional with people. Another one of my favorite verses is, teach us to number our days that we would have a heart of wisdom, so that we take advantage, of every opportunity that's in front of us. And so I've been able to really develop some special relationships, not just with the people that go with me, but people who are in Philadelphia as well.
Wow. I mean, it is amazing. And, we have these conversations with our family and friends. None of us are promised a day. And yet cancer patients feel that more exquisitely pointed than any of us. And yet you've taken such an amazing approach to it that I was reading the article where you said, you always wanted to be really real about your diagnosis, but that you weren't using it like a ticking clock. I'm not quoting you correctly, but, it was just a really great way to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave and I were actually talking about this today. Like you were just saying, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow or that I'll even make it home today. But we're just I think it's a matter of looking forward and not always looking back and not having that victim mindset of woe is me. And I have to be kind of careful with that because cancer is hard. Cancer is hard, and having a rare cancer, I think, can even be harder, especially when pretty much everybody who is diagnosed has to travel for some type of treatment. And it's lonely because it's a cancer, any cancer is hard. But sometimes when you have other cancers, you have people that you can call and talk to, or maybe you had a family member you knew. And in this case, that's not usually how it works. And so one of the things I've tried to do, especially over this time, is be very, very much so an advocate for people with ocular melanoma, be involved in support groups. And, we've started this foundation that we started in May, just to be able to help those feel not so lonely that are going through this, because it's a very tricky thing to do.
Tell us about the foundation.
Mm-hmm. So again, once I saw, gosh, I've been so fortunate to have my trips paid for. And over the course of the years, I can't tell you how many people I could be very tenderhearted about this because it can make me really sad. The number of people I know who wanted treatment but could not afford to get to it. And people who were having GoFundMe accounts, or their church was doing bake sales, or they're having to use Pilots for Christ to get to wherever it was that they needed to go. And then people who would be in treatment and have to make the hard choice of, I can't go anymore. Even though there was an option available to them, they couldn't get to it. So about a year and a half ago, I was on a support group call, and a lady came on like a guest speaker. And I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but she was coming to talk about mental health. And very arrogantly, I was like, oh, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm good. I'm an optimistic person. I'm good. She began asking questions about, how many of you have had to stop working, which I had to stop working. How many of you enjoyed having a goal every day? And so many of us raised our hand. And as she progressed through the call, she just talked about how important it is to be others focused. That was one thing. And she also said, and be able to get focused on something else, like a hobby. So she talked about gardening and bird watching and painting. And I love art, but I'm not good at it. And she talked about this class, a watercolor class that you could do 27 classes for $27 on Instagram. So I did it. And if you know any artist, you like to paint, but you don't necessarily like to sell your paintings. And before you know it, you have 1,000 paintings in your house that you have, what do you do with them? And so that was my case. I painted all the time, and I decided to start coupling my paintings with Bible verses that had encouraged me through my own journey. And I gave them away as gifts before Christmas this past year. And then I would send them to people newly diagnosed, that kind of thing. And very naively, I put it on Facebook that I was doing this. And before you know it, it just went viral. And so I decided, since I was selling these, that I could use the proceeds. So all the proceeds from the art goes to help people travel for treatment. And then in May, we decided to couple that with actually starting a foundation. And it's called the Eye on Grace Foundation. And then I have Eye on Grace Art that you can follow on Facebook or Instagram. And we sell all different types of inspirational cards, note cards with envelopes. They come in sets that are framed or not framed. And again, all the proceeds go to help people travel for treatment. And so far, even though we've only been started for a month, we've already sponsored 4 people to travel. Actually, one person in your area is traveling from Spanish Fort to Philadelphia tomorrow, that we're able to cover her and her husband being able to go. So my family's been involved with it. We make no money from it at all. Again, all of the donations and money are going toward that. And we have a really exciting thing that's going to be happening in the fall. We're doing what's called an eye patch challenge. It's a little bit like the Icebox challenge, if you remember the ALS challenge.
Oh, I do. Very much.
Yeah, you'll have to stay tuned for this. We're going to encourage everybody to wear an eye patch and do an activity where they can record themselves doing it, whether it's golfing or cooking, or we don't want to encourage you to drive with an eye patch on. But anyway, we are going to encourage people to do that and then record it. And when they do, hopefully they'll contribute to our foundation and then challenge 5 people to do the same thing. We want to raise awareness that really the only way you can find out about this cancer is to have a dilated eye exam. So we're going to encourage people to share that when they do this eye patch challenge. And then, of course, encourage people to donate to the foundation, of which that will go for 2 reasons. We're going to do that where we can help sponsor people for travel, but then we're also hoping to raise enough money to give a portion of the eye patch challenge money to research efforts for metastatic disease. So be looking for that. We're excited about that.
We sure will. That's incredible. And I know our listeners will be really excited to connect. I've seen your beautiful artwork on the Facebook page, and I really just encourage people to look at it. It would make an amazing gift for anybody, not just cancer patients, but, I thought of Mother's Day and Father's Day and all those special occasions. So I had one other question for you before we finish up. Tell us about your Uber driver in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's such a sweet. I have 2 very sweet drivers. So actually, when I first started going to Philly, I fell and broke both of my feet. This is a crazy story,
gosh.
But broke both of my feet in the middle of Rittenhouse Square very early on. And, of course, had to be helped to my hotel. I had to go from the hotel to the orthopedic. And really, I just, called an Uber to help me do that. And the gentleman that showed up, his name is Greeno Chevalier. He's from Haiti. And that was our initial meeting, was him. He actually literally took me to the orthopedic and didn't just drop me off, but physically picked me up out of the car, got a wheelchair for me, took me upstairs to the doctor. My sister Margie was with me and was very helpful during that time as well. But he was just somebody I met. Well, then fast forward, every now and then I would just call an Uber driver and he would be the one to pick me up. And a couple of times he would get in the car and he'd say, I knew I was going to see you today. I have a word for you. And he would give me a Bible verse like Psalm 44. He gave me one time going to scans with my husband. And then I finally just asked him, I was like, I come every week at the same time. Could we just schedule where you would be the one to take me to the airport every week? And he does. So he's probably driven me to the airport, at least 100 times. No exaggeration. Wow. And we just have a very sweet relationship. He and his wife and me and my husband, where I guess it was 2 weeks ago, would be a great story for people to go on my Facebook page, just Ashley McCrary, and see the encounter I had with him, because he's always praying for me and encouraging me and sending me encouraging words and whatnot. But on this particular day, we found out our flight was delayed and we're driving to the airport. And he was like, I want to sing a song for you. I believe that, the verse Zephaniah 3:17, that the Lord wants to rejoice over you with singing. And so he sang a hymn to me written by Martin Luther and he sang it in French. And it was so tender and sweet. When we got to the airport, we again had plenty of time. He prayed over me. Just a sweet friendship with him. His name is Greeno. And then I have another driver that picks me up every week. Greeno doesn't work on Sundays. And so this other driver picks me up every week. And he's from Bangladesh. And he's been driving me since September of this past year. His name is Hasib. And Hasib also just is just very generous of spirit with me. His mom has come with him to pick me up. He brought gifts and whatnot. There is a very, very sweet relationship with both of them. And I have a sweet lady named Dee that I met at a restaurant that I ate at every week. She's 83 years old. And she and I have probably eaten together, 40 or 50 times, where I was just coming every week. She was eating by herself. And so I approached her and just said, I come here every week. And she was like, let's get together. So we did. And we have a very sweet relationship as well, with her and her daughter. And we have a lot in common. And people love when I get to eat with Dee. I should do a book about dinners with Dee, or my rides with my Uber driver, because I've been very, very blessed with some sweet friendships up there for sure.
Well, I just love those stories. And to me, it sounds like you and your time with them is a blessing to them as well.
Well, it does go both ways. I think it goes both ways, and that I do look for opportunities to be able to, hopefully, like I said, just be intentional with people. And you never know why somebody crosses your path. And so I try to look for those reasons, and I'll ask the Lord, show me why do you have this person in my life? And hopefully we can make a difference for them. It's the same with, I have the same nurses every week. And one of the nurses, Christy, is who I work with the most, or Eddie. Matter of fact, Auburn, has Bruce Pearl's Outlive program. And one day I showed up to get treatment, and one of the nurses there, Eddie, had bought Outlive shirts for everybody.
Oh,
the whole team of people and me. And, you have those type of friendships and relationships that are very special. If the day comes that I won't be going back to Philly, as odd as it's going to sound, I think it's going to be really hard, because these are people who've been very important to me during a very challenging time in my life. And I've been very, very blessed just by sweet relationships up there.
Well, is there anything else our listeners should know about your story? I can't tell you how much of a blessing this conversation's been for me.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I would just want to encourage people, again, anybody diagnosed with any hard diagnosis, instead of just sitting in the heavy of that, to make the most of every opportunity that you have, to consider every day a gift. One of the reasons I started the foundation is I wanted to be able to have a positive impact on other people and be able to do something that could help somebody else that was in a similar situation. And I think when you take the focus off of you and you put it on other people, it really does help you, it just not be so heavy. And so I would encourage people to do that. See what you can do for other people. Try to stay positive. I encourage people to explore their faith, because literally God has just sustained me. Even our verse from 2 Corinthians 12:9 is the verse that's for our foundation. And it just talks about how God, has sufficient grace for each one of the moments that we go through. And that when we're weak, that's when he's strong. And I do want to encourage people just, to reach out and know that you're never alone. God is with you always and will provide and take care of all your needs.
I can't think of a better place to end. Thank you so much, Ashley. I think our listeners will get so much out of your story and your encouragement.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on today.
As I said to Ashley, I was so inspired by our conversation today, her faith, her strength, and her grit in the face of her diagnosis, and her ability to live real, to really understand her prognosis and her diagnosis, and yet to take full advantage of every minute of every day to be a light to other people, to receive joy and prayer and faith from other people, and the gift of her being in this world and enjoying the gift of other people in her life. And so I hope all of you take something from that, whether you are a cancer survivor, a cancer patient, a caregiver, or someone who just wants to learn a little bit more. Be sure to check out Ashley's foundation and the artwork at Eye on Grace Foundation and Eye on Grace Foundation Art by Ashley McCrary on Facebook, where all proceeds go to help other cancer patients on their journey. And look for the Eye Patch Challenge this fall, where you too can challenge your friends to do activities with an eye patch on and raise funds for clinical trials for metastatic cancer patients. And until next time, take care of each other and keep cancering. Thanks again for listening. And don't forget to submit your questions at www.cancering.com. We're here for all of those questions and we'll get you the answers. This show is brought to you by the University of South Alabama Mitchell Cancer Institute. MCI is a cutting-edge cancer research and patient center built to fight cancer smarter in Mobile and Baldwin County, Alabama. Our researchers and clinicians focus daily on the struggle against cancer, serving a potential catchment population of more than 4.1 million people, with a singular focus of advancing cancer diagnosis, treatment, and prevention throughout the Gulf Coast and beyond, with science, technology, and hope. Want to know more about the Mitchell Cancer Institute? Visit us at usamci.com or search for us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Mitchell Cancer Institute is a member of USA Health. To learn more about all of our hospitals, clinics, and services, visit usahealthsystem.com.